An extension of the primary purpose or main idea question would be where there is a question focused on the organization of the passage. That means how are the ideas presented, whether they are presented in terms of a certain sequence, whether there is a mention of a problem, whether there is a theory, whether there is an explanation, whether there are examples, counterexamples. All these elements have to be seen. Now, the organization of the passages, how these different paragraphs that are given are connected to one another. Now, like we said, there is a common thread that runs throughout the paragraph that we say is the central idea of the passage. So, the central idea of the passage is always a common factor in any number of paragraphs that are given in that particular passage. So, the central idea is the idea that is constantly reiterated or it's constantly mentioned either in terms of an acceptance or a refutation. It is constantly mentioned in every paragraph. So the central idea that is there, the central thread that is running through is something that determines the organization. Now once we have identified the central idea, whatever is the core concept that is being described in the entire passage, how that particular central idea is either opposed, defended, it is attacked or counter-attack is given. Whatever the purpose, it is evident in the formulation of the ideas. The way the ideas are presented becomes much more important. Now let's take this passage where we are talking about in the first paragraph, a tantalizing paradox peers out from. So paradox again is nothing but a problem. So the teasing problem or the problem that we have here probably is something we do not know what the problem is. Now this first paragraph ends in an obvious puzzle is. Now when you take a look at this, an obvious puzzle is. What is the meaning of puzzle? Why do we use puzzle? That means there is a paradox mentioned here, there is a problem here, but the problem is not resolved. That's why they say in the last sentence that it is still a puzzle. Alright, so there is a problem, there is a puzzle about the problem. Now the first year students learn that, so obviously it is talking about some basic information or basic knowledge, but so whatever is mentioned in the second paragraph, that is being contradicted, and there is a rhetorical question posed when it says, but where does it come from? Now what is the connectivity here? The connectivity is that there is a puzzle, there is a problem, there is a puzzle, and we are asking a question, where does it come from? Where does the problem come from, perhaps? Then the third paragraph, one theory proposed by scientists. So obviously the problem that is mentioned here and the question that is asked here, where does it come from, that is perhaps being answered here in terms of a theory proposed by scientists. How does the third paragraph end? It says perhaps the peons are responsible. Perhaps. When do we use the word perhaps? When we are sure of something, we say this is, or this must, or there should be. But we say perhaps, or maybe, only when we are not sure. So you see the common connectivity here. There is a puzzle, there is a question which does not answer the puzzle. In the beginning of the third paragraph, there is a proposition of a theory, but the theory is still retaining the conundrum because here, or rather the puzzle here, because it is still in terms of perhaps. Fourth paragraph, the scientist theory, however. So since this is still not resolved, we have used however, and then the fifth paragraph it says, later scientists refined the theory, which means there is a resolution of a theory, and the last sentence of this, if you see, it says if the protons, and it goes on, however, perhaps. So there is a contrast. Again, the last sentence of the passage ends with perhaps. So do you see the constancy here? There is a puzzle which is not answered. Then there is a question wherein the puzzle is retained. Third paragraph begins by trying to answer in terms of a theory, but the theory does not really answer. That's the reason why there is a perhaps here. Fourth paragraph begins with a contrast, however, so probably the contrast is mentioned. Fifth paragraph begins with saying later scientists refined the theory, but it ends saying if there is an XYZ condition, then maybe the problem can be resolved. So here, in the last sentence also, the author is not saying that there is a definitive solution that is offered. What he's actually saying here is that there's one theory and then there is another theory that is produced. That is the reason why he uses later and refine the theory. Alright, now keeping this structure in view, let's take a look at the answer options that are given. Now, which of the following best describes the organization of this passage as a whole? As a whole, there's a problem. There is a puzzle still retained. There is an attempt in the third paragraph to propose a theory to resolve the problem. But then again, it still ends in perhaps. Fourth paragraph is a continuation of the scientist's theory with a contrast. Fifth paragraph, later scientists refined, but then the last paragraph or the fifth paragraph concludes with if XYZ condition is there, then perhaps. So that means there is no complete resolution to it. So keeping that in mind. Option A, presentation of a theory followed by refutation. Now that may be true, refutation with the fourth paragraph, but then it does not take the entire passage as a whole. The answer option has to be in terms of the passage as a whole, and even if you say there is a refutation, that's only part of the passage, and moreover, it doesn't say presentation of a theory. That is not the only component of the passage. There has to be a paradox that is mentioned because that's how it begins. Second, description of a problem. Problem probably in terms of paradox. Problem probably in terms of puzzle. Perhaps, if, maybe. Maybe we can keep this as an answer because it says description of a problem. Up to here it appears to be right. Followed by history of attempts to resolve it. Followed by history of attempts, that means there should be more than one attempt to resolve it. That's why they say history of attempts. More than one attempt we can say is there to resolve the paradox, because here you are saying one theory proposed by scientists, later scientists. So first theory, second theories. From what we can see here, there is at least two theories mentioned. So maybe this is an answer. Option C, statement of a fact followed by logical analysis. Sounds very convincing. It sounds very convincing. But is the passage talking about statement of a fact? If it is statement of a fact, why are we using the words paradox? If it is statement of a fact, why are we saying if this condition is there, then maybe it will be resolved? Why are we asking rhetorical questions and then saying perhaps? All these pointers, all these factors are pointers to the fact that it is not statement of a fact followed by logical analysis, because it is not a complete answer for anything. So this can be eliminated very safely. Option D, description of a scientific discovery followed by discussion of its implications. A scientific discovery? Maybe because it's talking about scientists. Maybe there's a description of a scientific discovery followed by discussion of its implication. It doesn't very clearly state that there is a problem and that there is no obvious solution to a problem. So here, discussion of its implication is not really something that is telling us of our answer, but at this point of time, let's retain that as an answer. Let's look at option E, analysis of a theory and suggestions on how it should be taught. How it should be taught. Just because in the second paragraph we have all first year students, it is immediately assumed that the whole passage or the organization of the whole passage is about how to analyze a certain theory and how it has to be taught. So this is very, very narrow in its perception. So we can eliminate A, C and E very clearly. D is very, very attractive because it sounds right, it looks right. But if you compare B and D, B is more on the mark because there is no ambiguity when it says there is a problem stated. There is no ambiguity when it says followed by history of attempts to resolve it. History meaning there's more than one attempt, and that is evident in these paragraphs. Alright, So an organization question essentially tests you how the passage is organized. Now, many a time, when you scan the passage, when you quickly read the passage, you would be able to see how the passage is organized. But to consolidate whatever you have scanned through, you can take a look at the first sentence and how the language is used in the first and the last sentence, and how the last sentence of a paragraph connects with the previous paragraph, and previous paragraph last sentence. Now this, and also notice the kind of language that is being used. Always pay attention to negative words. Pay attention to words like if, maybe, perhaps, because as you can see here, there is an element of suspense there. When there is an if, maybe, perhaps, there is no definitiveness. At the same time, if you have a passage or a sentence which say there is an absolute answer to this, then very surely there is an answer. So make note of the kind of language that is being used. That will point towards the right answer. Don't be taken in by answers that look very attractive because you have a very vague idea of what the passage is all about. From that vagueness should come specificity based on individual words mentioned in these lines. That is what will establish the organization of the passage. Now, I'm not recommending that you don't read the passage at all. What I am saying is, after scanning the passage, after skim reading the passage, or whatever other method you use to read the passage, concentrate on these elements for you to be able to identify which one or two answers are more logical. Based on that, it becomes very easy. If you take it bit by bit, it becomes very easy to analyze which one is a logical answer to the passage that is given. So I hope you have understood how to tackle the basic organization of the passage as a whole type of question.